What if the man behind the world's most ambitious companies, SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, turned to the camera and said something so raw, so unexpected, that the internet didn't know how to react? What if, after years of being labeled a genius, a billionaire, even a madman, he finally let the world see the fragile human behind the numbers? That clip, just under 90 seconds long, exploded across every platform within hours. No flashy graphics. No clever edits. Just a still frame of Elon Musk, face half shadowed by the lights of a modest studio, as a soft-spoken journalist asked the question that would make headlines around the world. "What's your biggest regret, Elon?" His answer wasn't rehearsed. He didn't blink. He looked away from the camera for a second, jaw tightening, then he said it. And the world stopped. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? By the time the sun rose the next day, 3 million people had shared the clip. It wasn't just about Elon anymore. It was about grief. It was about something real. That's when I knew the story wasn't finished. That was the beginning. My name is Rachel Carter, and if you told me a week ago I'd be the one to sit across from Elon Musk while he laid bare the one thing he could never fix, I would have laughed in your face. I'm not famous. I don't have a podcast empire or a blue checkmark that people care about. I'm just a journalist who asks the questions other people are too polite to ask. I'd spent years chasing stories that mattered to someone, just not everyone. Missing veterans. Corrupt city councils. Mothers searching for sons. Not the kind of stories that go viral. But something told me this one was different. The story didn't start with Elon, not really. It started with a phone call from my editor, Jules, who practically screamed into the receiver before I'd even had my first sip of coffee. "You've got 3 days to get to Austin. You're interviewing Elon Musk." I paused, thinking it was a joke. "Me?" I asked. "Not Rogan. Not Oprah. Me." "Yes, you," Jules replied. "Because he asked for someone who doesn't kiss his ass. Someone real." That part floored me. Elon Musk asked for me. I threw clothes into a suitcase like it was a fire drill, printed out everything I'd ever written that even vaguely mentioned him, and caught the first flight south. On the plane, I watched that clip again and again, trying to read between the lines. His regret wasn't about a failed launch or a bad deal. It wasn't about Twitter or crypto or AI. It was personal. Deep. Dangerous. The kind of thing you don't talk about unless you've got nothing left to lose. When I landed in Austin, I didn't go to a hotel. I went straight to the Tesla facility, badge clutched in hand, heart thudding. Security knew I was coming. They waved me through without so much as a glance. The whole place was quiet. Too quiet for a building that cranked out some of the world's most advanced machines. A tall assistant with perfect posture greeted me and led me down a hallway that smelled like ozone and industrial polish. "He'll be with you shortly," she said, then vanished. The room they left me in was sterile and cold, just 2 chairs and a black table with a single bottle of water. No cameras. No lights. Just a ceiling mic hanging like an eye from above. Elon walked in like a man walking into his own funeral. No smile. No bravado. Just tired eyes and a quiet nod. He sat down slowly, as if the air was heavier than usual. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low. "I've read your stuff. You ask the hard questions." "That's the idea," I replied. "You sure you're ready for them?" "Doesn't matter if I'm ready," he said. "Let's just start." I opened my notebook, but I didn't look down. I looked straight at him. The clip. The regret. "You knew what you were saying would go viral, didn't you?" He shrugged. "It wasn't about going viral. It was about saying it out loud." "Why now?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the table, tapping a finger once, twice. Then he said, because pretending I don't care doesn't work anymore. That answer hit harder than I expected. Elon Musk, the man who launched rockets and joked with presidents, was sitting in front of me talking like a father, not a CEO. I leaned in. Tell me about it. The regret. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw something crack behind his eyes. Not weakness, humanity. And just as he opened his mouth to speak, a knock interrupted us. His assistant poked her head in. Sorry. You're needed in the lab, Mr. Musk. He waved her off without looking. Reschedule. The door closed. Silence returned. Where were we? He asked. I swallowed hard. The regret. He nodded slowly. Yeah. The regret. But he didn't finish the thought. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and said, Tell me something, Rachel. Do you think grief ever really goes away? Or do we just build things around it so we can keep walking? I was taken off guard. You're asking me? You lost someone, he said. I can see it. He wasn't wrong. My dad disappeared when I was 7. One day he was there, reading me stories and giving me quarter tips for setting the table. The next, he was just, gone. No explanation. No body. No goodbye. Just a long silence that stretched through birthdays, graduations, and nights when I screamed into my pillow hoping he'd come back. I think grief's like a shadow, I finally answered. You can ignore it, but it's always there. Following you. Waiting for nightfall. Elon didn't say anything. Just nodded again. Then you'll understand why I'm doing this, he said. Why I'm telling the truth now. I wanted to push, to ask the real question, but something about his tone stopped me. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. Instead, I closed my notebook and said, then let's do it right. Tomorrow. Cameras. Lights. One shot. You and me. He agreed. We stood. Shook hands. His grip was softer than I expected. Not weak, measured. He left first, disappearing into the corridor like a ghost. I sat alone for a moment longer, staring at the place where he'd been. Something had changed. Not just in him, but in me. I wasn't chasing a headline anymore. I was chasing truth. And maybe, just maybe, healing. As I walked out into the Texas sun, I couldn't stop thinking about that clip. About how the world had reacted to a billionaire finally speaking from the heart. And I knew, deep in my gut, that whatever came next would be bigger than anything I'd ever written. The real story was just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before Elon Musk ever sat across from me in that cold interview room, before I ever heard the word regret pass through his lips, there was another story that shaped me into the kind of person who'd chase a truth no one else wanted to hear. It started in a cramped house in Dayton, Ohio, the kind of town where winter lasts too long and opportunity seems to skip over the zip code. My mom worked nights at a nursing home and slept during the day, so I spent most of my childhood tiptoeing through our shotgun house, learning how to be invisible. My dad, Aaron Carter, not the pop star, just a guy with a guitar and a soft voice, was my world. He worked construction in the summers and played bar gigs in the winters, always smelling like sawdust and beer and peppermint gum. I remember lying on the couch at night while he sang Johnny Cash songs, his voice deep and steady, his eyes somewhere else, always somewhere far away. Then one day, he was gone. No note, no warning. Just didn't come home. My mom filed a missing persons report, but the cops shrugged. Probably just walked away, one of them said, as if my father was a piece of trash that rolled off in the wind. After a few weeks, my mom stopped talking about him. She boxed up his records, donated his clothes, and changed the locks. "You can't live in the past," she told me once, as if that meant anything to a girl who just lost her hero. I tried to forget. I tried to be normal. School, friends, dates, none of it stuck. Nothing felt real after that. That's probably why I became a journalist. I was always chasing ghosts, always trying to turn the unanswered into something solid. I never got closure, so I searched for it in other people's stories. I went to Northwestern on a scholarship I barely qualified for and graduated with a degree in journalism and a chip on my shoulder the size of Lake Michigan. My professors liked me because I was relentless. I never took no for an answer, never left an interview until I got something that felt like the truth. But I wasn't interested in writing fluff. I didn't want to cover celebrity divorces or fashion trends. I wanted to know why a homeless vet had no family left. I wanted to know what made a teacher snap in front of her class. I wanted to know why powerful men buried secrets behind money and lawyers. After college, I bounced from one low-paying job to another, each one a stepping stone I prayed wouldn't collapse beneath me. I slept in apartments where the heat barely worked, ate ramen with canned tuna, and counted my tips from waitressing on the weekends. But I wrote like hell. I chased every lead, followed every thread, sometimes at the cost of friendships and more than one relationship. Love never stuck. Not because I didn't want it, but because every time someone got close, I worried they'd vanish like he did. Then came New York. A job at an independent media company that didn't pay much but promised freedom to write what mattered. That's where I met Jules, my editor. She had the instincts of a wolf and the heart of a war nurse. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had, but she believed in me. When she gave me the call about Elon, it wasn't just an assignment, it was a signal. I'd climbed far enough to matter. But that first night in Austin, after meeting Elon and seeing the crack beneath the armor, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in my hotel room, the light from the street lamp outside carving gold shapes on the ceiling, thinking about what this story could become. And more than that, I thought about him. My dad. I hadn't thought about him that way in years, not in the sharp, immediate way where you feel the loss all over again like it's day one. I remembered the last thing he said to me. It was late. I was 7, sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal because I'd refused to eat the casserole Mom made. He sat across from me, strumming his guitar, humming something he said he was working on. He looked tired but happy. "You're gonna do something big someday, Peanut," he said. "Something the world remembers." I'd laughed. I was just a kid. What did I know about the world? That memory stuck with me like a splinter. All these years chasing stories, trying to do something meaningful, and I never stopped to think maybe I was trying to prove him right. Or prove to myself that he had a reason to leave, some big noble reason I just didn't understand. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. I didn't bother with makeup. I wore black slacks, a gray sweater, and boots that didn't click when I walked. I wanted to be quiet. Invisible. Let the story speak. When I arrived back at the Tesla facility, security recognized me and buzzed me in without a word. This time, the lights were on. The building felt alive. Engineers moved like ghosts behind glass walls, screens glowing with blueprints and code I couldn't begin to decipher. Elon's assistant was waiting. "He's in the studio," he said to go right in. The studio wasn't fancy. Just a soundproofed room with a black backdrop, 2 chairs, and a single 4K camera on a tripod. No director, no producer. Just me and him. Elon was already seated, staring down at something on his phone. When he looked up, I saw it again, that fracture behind the eyes. He wasn't here to promote. He was here to confess. I set up the recorder, checked the mic, and sat down across from him. "You ready?" I asked. He nodded. I pressed record. Elon, I began, keeping my voice steady. Yesterday you said something that stunned the world. You talked about regret. Today, I want to know what you meant. He took a long breath. The kind that fills the lungs like it might be the last one. Then he began. Everyone thinks I regret Twitter, or some stock decision, or a launch that failed. But that's not regret. That's calculation. Real regret, it lives in your bones. I let him talk. No interruptions. Just silence when he needed it, and a gentle push when he faltered. There was a time, he said, when I thought I could out-engineer pain. If I built enough, launched enough, maybe I could outrun it. But it doesn't work that way. As he spoke, I felt something inside me shift. Not because of what he was saying, but because of how he was saying it. He wasn't the billionaire in memes. He wasn't the guy who smoked a blunt on a podcast or made headlines for off-the-cuff tweets. He was just a man who had loved, and lost, and never fully healed. And I realized I knew that man. Because I'd been shaped by the same kind of grief. As the interview wrapped and I turned off the recorder, there was a long silence between us. Not awkward. Sacred. He looked at me and said, "You've lost someone, too." I nodded. "My dad. Did you ever find out what happened?" "No, I'm sorry," he said. And I believed him. In that moment, we weren't journalist and subject. We were just two broken people trying to make sense of what was missing. As I left the studio, my phone buzzed with a message from Jules. "Get anything real?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, more than I expected. And it was true. I had no idea where this story would go. But I knew it was no longer just about Elon. It was about the cost of genius. The weight of memory. The silence of absence. And the impossible task of living with regret. It's strange how something that feels ordinary at first glance can pivot your entire life. That's how it felt the morning I was called into Jules' office for what I assumed would be a typical editorial debate about something small, maybe a feature title that needed work or a source that had gone quiet. Instead, the moment I opened the door, I saw her pacing, barefoot, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, muttering under her breath with that particular clipped urgency she only used when something was both exciting and terrifying. I didn't interrupt her. I just leaned against the doorframe and waited. When she noticed me, she stopped mid-step, pulled the phone from her ear, and pointed it at me like a weapon. "You're not going to believe this," she said, half laughing. "But you're about to fly to Texas." That was the moment it began, the unraveling of the career I thought I knew and the beginning of a story that wouldn't just define me professionally but strip away everything I thought I understood about people, grief, and the layers we hide behind. "Texas?" I asked cautiously. "Why?" Jules set the phone down, finally motioned for me to come in, and handed me a single piece of paper. Letterhead from an encrypted email platform we sometimes used for high-profile contacts, except this wasn't from some whistleblower or mid-tier politician. This was from someone whose name needed no introduction. The subject line was short, confidential, interview request, Musk. I blinked. "No way," I muttered. "Way," Jules replied. "Apparently, he saw your interview with Nathan Lorne, the cybersecurity guy whose brother died in that ransomware case. Elon called it genuine. Said he's tired of journalists who are either too soft or too hostile. He wants someone who listens." That interview had been brutal, emotionally charged, and messy. Nathan had cried on camera. So had I. It hadn't been about exposing weakness, it had been about naming it. About letting it breathe. The fact that Musk, of all people, had watched it, let alone appreciated it, felt surreal. "Does he know I've written about him before?" I asked. Some of it wasn't flattering. Jules nodded. "He knows. That's part of why he picked you. He said, and I quote, 'Better a skeptic who's honest than a fanboy who fakes it.'" I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't flattered. I was suspicious. Why now? Why me? Why this? So, what's the angle? I asked. What does he want to talk about? He didn't say, Jules answered. But Rachel, listen to me, this isn't a PR stunt. There's something going on with him. Something personal. You saw the clip, right? Of course I had. The clip. The one where he was asked about his biggest regret and for the first time didn't dodge, didn't deflect with humor or an anecdote. He just sat there, for a full 10 seconds, visibly struggling with emotion before finally saying something no one expected. I regret not being there when it mattered most. No further explanation. No details. But in those 10 words, everything shifted. The internet erupted into theories. Was it about his ex-wife? One of his kids? A missed deathbed moment with a mentor? Everyone wanted answers. But I didn't want a headline. I wanted the truth. All right, I told Jules. I'll go. But I want full editorial control. If this turns into a fluff piece or corporate damage control, I'm out. Jules smiled. Wouldn't expect anything less. I spent the next 12 hours preparing, researching not just Musk's career, but his personal history, his interviews over the years, every anecdote, every contradiction. I found myself poring over images of his younger years, his early days in Canada, his relationship with his siblings, his first startups, the harsh breakups, and the tragic loss of his first son, Nevada. That part wasn't widely discussed. It was almost like it had been erased from public memory. A few headlines existed, sure, but nothing deep. Nothing raw. And something about that made me pause. There was pain in his life he'd never processed publicly. I knew that look. I wore it every time I talked about my father. When I finally boarded the flight, I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation humming in my chest. Not because I was afraid to talk to him, but because I suspected this story might open wounds, his and mine, that hadn't healed properly. That's what real interviews do. They cut. And if you're lucky, or maybe unlucky, they bleed. The plane landed in Austin just after dusk. Warm air and the hum of cicadas wrapped around the terminal like a southern embrace. I hailed a rideshare and spent the trip scrolling through more footage, clips of Musk joking on SNL, clips of him breaking down during investor calls, clips of him talking about Mars like it was a lost lover he needed to reach before it was too late. I kept thinking, what is this man really running from? The Tesla headquarters was quiet when I arrived. Not eerily so, just efficient. Too clean. Too perfect. I was greeted by a man named Carson who didn't smile but had kind eyes. He led me through a minimalist maze of hallways into a waiting room with a glass wall that overlooked a desert-style courtyard of gravel and succulents. "He'll be with you in a moment," Carson said before vanishing. The silence gave me a chance to check my equipment again. No assistants. No camera crew. He'd requested only one camera, one mic, and one person. It felt stripped down, intentional. And when he entered, wearing dark jeans, a plain t-shirt, and the kind of expression you only see on people who've stopped pretending, I knew I wasn't here to talk about rockets. We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive. He sat down slowly, like he wasn't sure if his legs would hold him. I introduced myself, thanked him for the opportunity. He didn't small talk. Just said, let's get to the part that matters. So I asked the first question. The easy one. What made you decide to talk now? He looked at the floor, then up at the ceiling, then finally met my eyes. Because I can't keep pretending anymore. The way he said it, like a confession, like a surrender, stopped me cold. Pretending what? I asked softly. That work makes the pain go away, he said. That building things is the same as healing. It's not. I could feel the temperature in the room shift. This wasn't just another interview. This wasn't for the public. This was personal. I asked if we could turn on the camera. He nodded. But don't cut anything, he said. Whatever I say, it stays. I agreed. He took a breath. Then he said, ask me the question again. I knew what he meant. What's your biggest regret? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, which he'd folded tightly in his lap. Then he looked back at me, and in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in any previous interview with him: fear. Not the fear of being judged or cancelled. The fear of being truly seen. And that's when he began to speak. He didn't start with Nevada. He didn't even start with SpaceX or PayPal or his childhood in Pretoria. He started with something unexpected: silence. Elon Musk looked at the camera, then at me, and for a full 10 seconds said nothing, as if he were recalibrating his emotional systems to withstand the weight of what he was about to say. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and began with a sentence that felt like it belonged in a confession more than an interview. The thing most people don't realize is that I don't do this, any of this, because I want to be admired, he said. I do it because I don't know what else to do with pain. It hit me in the gut because I hadn't expected him to go there so fast, and certainly not in that way. This wasn't a man trying to protect a legacy or pitch a product or craft a narrative for shareholders. This was a man who'd spent most of his adult life constructing one innovation after another, not to build an empire, but to survive himself. He leaned back in the chair, eyes on the ceiling now, voice distant, as he took me back to the beginning. My father wasn't a good man, he said flatly. People have speculated, and I've said things here and there, but the truth is, growing up with him wasn't just difficult. It was damaging. He made sure I never felt safe in my own skin. He described his early years in South Africa, how he was bullied relentlessly in school, how teachers turned a blind eye because his father was well connected, how he'd come home with bloody noses and bruised ribs and still be told it was his fault for being weird. He explained that his way of coping was to go inward, to retreat into books and circuits and imaginary futures where no one could hurt him, where Mars was more than just a dream, it was an escape hatch. He talked about his mother, May, with more warmth. She did her best, he said. She was working constantly, and she had her own traumas to deal with. But she believed in me. She always did. Even when I didn't make sense to anyone else, she said, Elon, you're building things the world doesn't even know it needs yet. That kept me going. I sat there, silent, letting him lead. He moved next to his early ventures, Zip2, X.com, PayPal. I wasn't trying to get rich, he said. I was trying to prove I wasn't worthless. Every successful launch, every new company, every sleepless night coding, none of it was about money. It was about meaning. And survival. I thought if I just kept going, maybe I could outrun what was behind me. He smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they've learned how to laugh at pain to keep from drowning in it. I asked about Tesla. Why electric cars? I said. Why that mission? He shrugged. Because it's hard. Because it matters. Because when you focus on something bigger than yourself, it keeps the voices quiet. And because I have kids. I want the planet they inherit to be better than the one I got. Then, slowly, the story turned. Not with a dramatic pivot or a sudden revelation, but with a subtle shift in his tone, like he was descending into deeper waters. Nevada was our first, he said. First time I really believed in the idea of forever. Just this tiny human who had no agenda, no baggage, just purity. He was beautiful. And then one day, he stopped breathing. I didn't move. I didn't write. I just listened. He was 10 weeks old. Sudden infant death syndrome. There was no warning, no signal. One moment we were laughing and feeding him, and the next, he was gone. His voice didn't break. It didn't need to. The words alone carried enough weight to crack the air. We were in the hospital. They tried everything. Machines. CPR. Prayers. But he was already gone. I remember holding him and thinking, I should have been able to stop this. That thought haunted me for years. Still does. I asked him what he did next. I went back to work, he said. The very next day. Everyone told me to take time off, to grieve, but I couldn't. I didn't know how. So I buried myself in code, in rockets, in risk. I told myself that if I just built enough, I'd feel something other than guilt. That was when the room shifted for me. That was the moment I saw him not as a billionaire or a tech visionary or a headline, but as a father who had no idea how to carry the weight of losing a child, so he built engines powerful enough to escape gravity itself. People don't understand why I push so hard, he said. Why I sleep on factory floors or fight over specs or fire people without blinking. It's not because I want control. It's because I've already lost the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. Everything else is noise. I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question I knew I had to ask. Do you regret not grieving? His eyes met mine. Every day, he said. But I didn't know how. And when I finally tried, the world had already moved on. He looked at the camera. Grief doesn't follow schedules. It doesn't respect progress or logic. It waits. And when you least expect it, it floods you. I asked if he ever talks to his other children about Nevada. He shook his head. Not enough. I should. I want to. But there's still this part of me that feels like if I say his name too loud, I'll break. That was when I saw it, real, visible pain. The kind that makes people human. The kind that never gets posted in earnings reports or printed on the front page. Just a father, still mourning a son he barely got to know. Sometimes, he said, voice quiet now, I wonder if all of this, the cars, the rockets, the neural links, if it's just my way of building something that won't die. That can't be taken from me. I wanted to reach across the table, to say something comforting, but I knew better. This wasn't about comfort. This was about truth. And truth often hurts more than silence. The interview wound down naturally after that. There was no clean wrap-up, no tidy sound bite. Just Elon sitting quietly, as if he'd finally set down a weight he didn't know he'd been carrying. I thanked him. He nodded. As I stood to leave, he said something I'll never forget. Make it real, he told me. Don't turn it into another myth. People need to know that even the ones who seem untouchable are still bleeding somewhere. I promised I would. And I meant it. As I walked back to the parking lot, the Texas sun now low on the horizon, I felt like I was carrying something sacred. Not an exclusive. Not a scoop. But a piece of someone's soul, shared with the world not to build a brand, but to break a silence. And I knew, with absolute clarity, that this story was going to cost me something too. I returned to my hotel room feeling like I had stepped out of a different reality, like something inside me had shifted in ways I couldn't yet name. The room was still, the air conditioner humming low, casting a white noise blanket over my spinning thoughts. I dropped my bag on the chair and collapsed onto the bed, still fully dressed, shoes and all, staring up at the ceiling as Elon's words replayed over and over in my head. Everything else is noise. Grief waits. Make it real. These weren't just sound bites from a billionaire trying to appear human. They were unguarded truths from a man who, for all his intellect and innovation, was still just a father mourning a son he'd never see grow up. And as I lay there in the quiet, something long buried in me stirred, memories of my own father, and of the years I spent trying not to remember him. There was a time when I thought forgetting was survival, when pushing forward without looking back felt like strength. But hearing Elon talk about Nevada, about pain not processed, grief not grieved, it cracked something open inside me. For the first time in years, I pulled out the small leather notebook I kept in the side pocket of my travel bag. It was old, worn around the edges, filled with scraps of thoughts and half-written letters I never sent. Most of them were to my dad. Some angry, some confused, some just empty pages stained with tears that never made it into words. I flipped to the last entry. Dated over 2 years ago, and stared at it. You left, and I don't know how to make peace with that. That was the last thing I wrote to him. No signature. Just a final attempt to carve truth out of silence. But now, after hearing Elon speak about Nevada, about loss, about the unbearable weight of what we never say, I found my hand reaching for a pen. I wrote, I met someone today who reminded me that grief never leaves, it just waits. And maybe I've been waiting, too. Waiting for you to come back. Waiting for a reason. Waiting for it all to make sense. But maybe the only way forward is to stop waiting. I didn't cry. Not yet. But I felt something soften, some tension I'd carried in my chest for far too long finally begin to loosen. I closed the notebook and placed it on the nightstand. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. I didn't know what I was writing exactly, an article, a transcript, a journal entry, but I knew I had to get it down before the moment passed. I started typing. When Elon Musk was asked about his biggest regret, he didn't speak about business, money, or missed opportunities. He spoke about silence. About what happens when we don't grieve. About the ghosts we carry in the shadows of our success. The words flowed faster than I could think. I described the room, his tone, the way he looked when he said Nevada's name. I didn't sensationalize it. I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth. The raw, difficult, human truth. I worked through the night, pausing only to sip cold coffee and reread certain passages. I kept asking myself, would this piece honor the story he shared, or exploit it? Would it speak to those who needed it most, or become just another viral distraction lost in the churn of the internet? I didn't want it to be viral. I wanted it to be real. Around 5 a.m., I closed my laptop and stared out the window as the first blush of dawn crept across the Austin skyline. The city was just beginning to stir, unaware that somewhere in a hotel room, a journalist had just unearthed the most human story behind the most inhuman pace of modern life. I finally lay down and drifted into a shallow, restless sleep, haunted by both the story I'd written and the story I hadn't yet told, the one about me. By noon, Jules had called twice. I finally answered on the third ring, my voice still hoarse. You okay? She asked immediately. You sound wrecked. I am wrecked, I said. But in a good way, I think. That bad, huh? She said gently. No. That real, I replied. You got the story? Yeah, I said. And then some. She asked for the file. I told her I needed one more day. I wanted to sit with it, make sure I got the tone right. She didn't push me. Jules trusted me in a way no one else ever had. Take your time, she said. But if it's as powerful as you're making it sound, we'll need to prepare for what comes next. I knew what she meant. Controversy. Scrutiny. Opinions. Half the world might call it brave. The other half might say I crossed a line. I didn't care about that. I just wanted the piece to reach the people who needed it. The ones still grieving in silence. That afternoon, I took a walk around the city to clear my head. Austin was alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. People on scooters. Dogs in sunglasses. Street musicians playing for no one and everyone. And for the first time in a long while, I felt present. Like I was seeing the world not just through the lens of a journalist, but as a person again. On the way back, I passed a bookstore with a hand-painted sign that read, "Sometimes healing begins with hearing someone else's truth." It stopped me in my tracks. It felt like a message. A whisper from the universe saying, yes, write this. Tell the truth. Make it matter. That night, I revised the article, not to clean it up, but to sharpen it. I added a line near the end that felt like the heart of the entire piece. In a world obsessed with productivity, perhaps our most courageous act is to pause and grieve what we've lost before we build what comes next. When I hit save, I sat in the dark for a long time. Not thinking. Just feeling. Feeling the weight of the story. Feeling my own scars. Feeling, for the first time in years, not afraid of what the silence held. I sent the draft to Jules just after midnight. The subject line read, "Finished. It's real." Her reply came 2 hours later. Just one sentence, "This is going to change people." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to. Something inside me had already begun to heal. The article went live the next morning. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen as the page loaded, refreshing it again and again, watching the numbers tick upward, views, comments, shares. What surprised me wasn't just the volume, but the depth of the response. Emails started pouring in. Messages from people all over the country, teachers, engineers, single moms, veterans. Thanking me for telling the story that wasn't just about Elon Musk, but about all of us. About grief we carry alone, about the scars we hide behind smiles and achievements. A woman from Ohio wrote that she lost her brother 2 years ago and had never told anyone how much it shattered her. A teacher from Chicago shared how she buried her pain after losing a student and kept going for the sake of others. A man from California admitted he had ignored his own father's death for years because life moved too fast. Each message was a reminder that even in the brightest spotlight, pain lived in the shadows. Elon's story wasn't unique, it was universal. Yet while the article gained traction, the media machine started to hum. Headlines spun different versions of the story: Elon Musk's hidden tragedy revealed, billionaire's grief explains his drive, Musk's regret, a son lost and never forgotten. Some took it as humanizing, others as a PR maneuver. The noise grew louder. On social media, debates erupted. Some praised Elon's vulnerability. Others questioned whether sharing personal grief was appropriate for a tech mogul. I watched it all unfold, knowing I had opened a door that many wanted to slam shut. Meanwhile, I got a call from an unexpected source, Elon's public relations team. They asked if I could do a follow-up interview with Elon, this time more focused on the man behind the headlines. I hesitated. The last interview had been raw and unfiltered. Could we do it again without it feeling like exploitation? After some thought, I agreed. I knew this story was bigger than just words on a screen, it was about connection. When I arrived at Tesla headquarters in Palo Alto, I found Elon waiting outside by the factory gates. He looked tired but resolute, dressed in his usual black shirt and jeans, hands buried deep in pockets. "You ready?" he said without preamble. We walked inside together. The factory buzzed with the sound of machines, robots assembling cars at a pace that felt almost impossible. "This place," Elon said, "is where I try to turn pain into progress." As we toured the floor, he pointed out the intricate details of battery packs, the care that went into each design, the workers who made it all possible. But beneath the technical jargon was a deeper story, a story about responsibility. "Success isn't just about making things faster or better," he said. "It's about knowing what you're building it for. The weight of it all can crush you if you forget that." Later, in a quieter room overlooking the factory, Elon opened up again, this time about the cost of his relentless drive. "I've made mistakes," he admitted. "Relationships broken, people hurt, moments missed. Sometimes I wonder if I pushed too hard because I was running from my own grief." He laughed, but it was hollow. "I thought if I kept moving, if I never slowed down, I wouldn't have to feel the emptiness." I asked about his family, his current kids, his hopes for them. His face softened. "I want to be better for them. I want them to know that it's okay to hurt. That you don't have to be perfect. That sometimes, love means being vulnerable. The conversation drifted to his vision for the future: Mars, renewable energy, artificial intelligence. Yet beneath the grand plans was a simple truth: a man seeking meaning beyond the spotlight. Before leaving, Elon turned to me with a quiet intensity. "Thanks for telling the part no one else would," he said. "It's not easy to show your cracks, but maybe that's where real strength lives." As I drove away from Tesla, I realized this story was no longer just his, it was ours. The story of how we all carry burdens unseen, how success and sorrow can coexist, how healing begins with honesty. And how sometimes, the biggest regrets teach us the most important lessons about who we are, and who we want to become. Elon Musk's story continued to unfold in ways that challenged everything I thought I knew about genius, grief, and the human spirit. After the interview at Tesla, I had access to more of his world, his daily routines, the people closest to him, and the relentless pressure that seemed to pulse beneath the surface of every decision he made. One of the first things that struck me was how isolated Elon appeared, despite the millions who followed him and the armies of employees who built his vision. In meetings, his mind raced ahead, jumping from concept to concept, but when the room fell quiet, you could see the weight settle in his eyes. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was something deeper, a fragile vulnerability he rarely let surface publicly. A close confidant, who asked to remain anonymous, described Elon as a man split in two. On one side was the visionary, the relentless innovator who demanded perfection and pushed boundaries that felt impossible to cross. On the other side was a man haunted by loss, burdened by doubt, and struggling to reconcile his public persona with his private pain. "He's like a conductor," this confidant told me. "But instead of an orchestra, he's trying to manage the chaos inside his own head." I wanted to understand this paradox more, so I spent days shadowing Elon's schedule, from dawn until well past midnight. I saw how he compartmentalized, strategizing rocket launches in the morning, negotiating contracts in the afternoon, then retreating to quiet moments where he would stare out at the horizon, lost in thought. His relationships mirrored this tension. Friends spoke of a man who could be both intensely generous and brutally demanding. His closest collaborators admired his vision but acknowledged how difficult it was to keep up. His romantic life, too, seemed caught between extremes: public divorces, complicated family dynamics, and the challenge of balancing fatherhood with the relentless pace of his work. One evening, as we talked about these contradictions, Elon confessed something that struck me: people assume if you're successful, you've figured everything out. But that's far from true. Success doesn't erase pain. It amplifies it in different ways. Sometimes it makes you feel even more alone. He described nights when the silence was deafening, when the ghosts of his past crept in and no amount of innovation could chase them away. "That's why I push," he said. "Because if I stop, even for a second, the emptiness swallows me." This admission brought a new dimension to the story, one that went beyond technology or ambition. It was about the fragility beneath the genius, the humanity beneath the myth. It reminded me of a quote by the writer Ernest Hemingway: "The world breaks everyone, and afterward, some are strong at the broken places." Elon was not unbreakable. He was broken, and in many ways, that break had shaped him. But it also made him more relatable, more real. I realized then that the public often mistakes vulnerability for weakness, but in truth, it is a source of profound strength. Elon's willingness to expose his regrets, his grief, his doubts, was not a sign of failure, it was a courageous act of honesty that connected him to millions. As I wrapped up my time with him, I asked what advice he might have for others carrying unseen burdens while chasing big dreams. Without hesitation, he said, "Don't run from your pain. Face it. Talk about it. It's the only way to heal. And remember, even the strongest people need help sometimes." Those words lingered with me long after the interview ended. They weren't just Elon Musk's words, they were a call to all of us to embrace our imperfections, to acknowledge our struggles, and to find strength in our shared humanity. As I left, I looked back once more at the man who had built rockets to escape the sky but still wrestled with the shadows inside. In that moment, I understood that his biggest regret wasn't about failures or lost opportunities. It was about the moments of connection missed, the love unspoken, and the pain left unhealed. This chapter of his story wasn't just about loss. It was about hope. About the possibility that even the most fragile genius could find light in the darkness. And maybe, in sharing his truth, we all could. The morning after my interview with Elon, I woke to the buzz of notifications and messages flooding my phone. The article had gone viral overnight, not just because of Elon's candid confession, but because it spoke to something bigger, something universal about ambition, sacrifice, and regret. As I scrolled through the comments, I noticed a pattern. Many praised Elon's honesty, calling him a hero for showing vulnerability. Others criticized him, accusing him of using tragedy to shape his public image or distract from controversies. But the most compelling responses were the personal stories, people who shared their own experiences of chasing dreams while losing parts of themselves along the way. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Claire, a startup founder in San Francisco. She wrote, "Your story about Elon made me realize how much I've sacrificed for success, the friendships I let fade, the nights I cried alone, the moments with my kids I missed. I'm starting to wonder if it's all worth it." I realized that beyond the headlines, Elon's regret echoed in countless lives, people caught in the relentless grind of ambition, often at great personal cost. To understand this better, I decided to explore the idea of ambition itself, the price we pay when we push too hard, and the toll it takes on our relationships, mental health, and sense of self. I reached out to psychologists, business leaders, and cultural commentators, gathering perspectives on what drives people like Elon Musk and what holds them back. Dr. Maya Simmons, a clinical psychologist specializing in high achievers, explained, ambition can be a double-edged sword. It fuels progress and innovation but can also lead to burnout, isolation, and unresolved emotional pain if not balanced with self-awareness and support. She told me that people driven by high ambition often develop coping mechanisms, some healthy, some harmful, to deal with stress and fear of failure. These mechanisms can include workaholism, emotional suppression, or avoidance of vulnerability. It made me think about Elon's own admission, pushing forward to avoid feeling the emptiness inside. I also spoke with David Ramirez, a former executive who left a lucrative tech career after a personal breakdown. "I thought success was everything," he told me. "But I lost myself in the process. It took hitting rock bottom to realize that ambition without balance is like driving a car without brakes." These insights framed Elon's story in a broader context. His regret wasn't just a personal failing, it was a cautionary tale about the human cost of relentless ambition. I remembered a moment from the Tesla factory tour when Elon said, "If I could go back, I'd tell my younger self to slow down, to cherish the people around him, because innovation means nothing if you lose your soul in the process." That line stayed with me. It was a rare glimpse of humility from a man often seen as invincible. But ambition, especially at Elon's level, isn't just a personal choice. It's also shaped by culture, expectations, and the pressure to deliver extraordinary results. I interviewed several young entrepreneurs who confessed to feeling trapped in this cycle, afraid to show weakness or step back for fear of losing relevance or momentum. "It's like being on a treadmill that won't stop," said Jenna, a 29-year-old founder from New York. "You want to rest, but if you do, you feel like you're falling behind." Elon's story resonated deeply with these struggles, offering both a warning and a source of hope. He showed that even the most driven people wrestle with their limits, and that admitting those limits can be a step toward healing. As the days passed, I continued to dig deeper into Elon's past, searching for clues about how ambition and regret had shaped his path. I learned about his childhood in South Africa, where he faced bullying and a sense of otherness. I read about his early failures, Zip2, PayPal, and the moments when his dreams seemed on the verge of collapse. What stood out was his resilience, but also the loneliness that accompanied it. Friends described him as brilliant but difficult, someone who demanded a lot from others but often kept his own vulnerabilities hidden. Yet beneath that tough exterior was a man who longed for connection and understanding. I also uncovered stories about his relationships with his children, how fatherhood had transformed him in ways few outside his inner circle knew. A family friend shared that Elon was fiercely protective and deeply loving, though sometimes struggling to balance that with his work. It became clear that his biggest regret, the loss of his son Nevada, was a wound that had forever altered how he saw success and what mattered most. In private moments, Elon told me he wished he had been more present, more patient, more willing to slow down and simply be with his family. "We get so caught up in chasing the next big thing," he said. "But the real treasure is right in front of us, the people who love us, the moments that don't come back." His words reminded me of a saying my grandmother used to repeat: "No one ever said on their deathbed, 'I wish I had worked more.'" They echoed across the interviews, emails, and conversations I'd had in the past weeks. Ambition is powerful, but it must be tempered by presence and love, or it risks becoming a hollow victory. Toward the end of my research, I attended a conference where Elon was a keynote speaker. The crowd was electric, hanging on every word as he spoke about the future, about Mars colonization, sustainable energy, and the role of technology in humanity's survival. But when the talk turned to questions, someone asked the question that had haunted me since I first met him: "What advice would you give to your younger self about balancing ambition and regret?" Elon paused longer than usual. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then he said, "I would tell him to remember that ambition is a journey, not a destination. To cherish the people who walk with you, not just the milestones. And to never lose sight of why you started in the first place. Because without purpose and love, success means nothing." The applause was thunderous, but in that moment, it felt like a quiet confession. A man laying bare his soul not just for himself, but for all of us trying to make sense of the cost of our dreams. As I left the conference hall, I thought about Claire's message again, the woman who questioned if it was all worth it. Elon's story didn't offer easy answers, but it did offer a path, a way to acknowledge our regrets, learn from them, and find meaning beyond the grind. That night, I sat down to write the next chapter of the story. It was no longer just about Elon Musk or his regrets. It was about ambition itself, its beauty, its burden, and the fragile balance we all must find to live fully and love deeply. And as I typed the last sentence, I realized that this was the story I had been searching for all along. Not just a story of a billionaire's loss, but a story about the human heart behind the headlines. Because in the end, isn't that what connects us all? The public rarely sees the battles fought behind closed doors, the silent struggles that shape even the most powerful people. Elon Musk's story revealed this truth in stark detail. After weeks of interviews, research, and reflection, I understood that the biggest fight wasn't against competitors, technical challenges, or even the harsh spotlight of fame. It was against himself. Mental health, particularly among high achievers, remains a taboo subject. Yet Elon's candidness about grief and regret opened a window few dared to peek through. I spoke with several experts to understand this invisible battle better. Dr. Anjali Patel, a psychiatrist specializing in mood disorders among entrepreneurs, explained that people like Elon often experience an intense mix of pressure, loneliness, and perfectionism. "There's a myth that successful people are immune to mental health challenges," she said. "In reality, the stakes are higher for them. They carry the weight of expectations, not just from others but from themselves." This insight resonated deeply with me as I recalled moments during my time with Elon where his composure faltered, when a rare flicker of doubt crossed his face, or when his voice softened as he spoke about his son. Those moments revealed the emotional toll of living in a world where failure isn't an option, but pain is unavoidable. Elon's story, I realized, was a powerful reminder that behind every headline-grabbing achievement lies a human being grappling with fear, loss, and hope. To delve further, I interviewed members of Elon's inner circle, friends, family, and colleagues who witnessed this battle firsthand. A close friend described Elon's relentless energy as both inspiring and exhausting. He never stops, she said. But sometimes I wonder what it's costing him inside. He carries so much, but he rarely lets it show. Another longtime collaborator noted that Elon's intense focus often masked a deeper vulnerability. He's brilliant, yes, but also incredibly fragile. The pressure he puts on himself is immense, and that can be dangerous. This duality, the genius and the fragility, painted a complex portrait of a man who lived on the edge between brilliance and burnout. It also raised questions about how society views success and strength. If people like Elon struggle, what does that say about the rest of us? The stigma around mental health keeps many silent, but his openness began to chip away at that wall. I witnessed this firsthand when I posted a follow-up piece online, sharing excerpts from our conversations about mental health. The response was overwhelming. Thousands shared their own stories of anxiety, depression, and the pressure to appear invincible. One commenter wrote, "Elon's story gave me permission to admit I'm struggling too." Another said, "If someone like him can feel broken, then maybe I'm not alone." These voices echoed a powerful truth: vulnerability is not weakness. It's a bridge to connection and healing. Elon's willingness to speak about his pain didn't diminish his accomplishments, it humanized them. As I continued to explore this theme, I uncovered a lesser-known side of Elon's journey, his attempts to seek help and find balance. Contrary to the image of an unstoppable force, he had faced setbacks and sought therapy to cope with his grief and anxiety. Friends recalled how, after his son's passing, he briefly withdrew from public life, wrestling with despair. Therapy, they said, helped him confront the rawness of his loss and begin to rebuild. This aspect of the story was vital because it challenged the narrative that strong people don't need support. Elon's experience demonstrated the opposite: true strength comes from recognizing when you need help and having the courage to ask for it. It also showed that healing is not linear. There were days when Elon was filled with hope, and others when he felt overwhelmed by regret. These fluctuations are part of the human condition, no matter your status or wealth. In one poignant moment, Elon shared with me a poem that helped him through dark times. It spoke about resilience, the inevitability of pain, and the promise of renewal. He said, "Sometimes I read it over and over, reminding myself that the night will end." This metaphor for life's cycles felt fitting for the entire story, a narrative of loss and love, despair and determination. I thought about the countless people who read about Elon's regret and saw their own struggles reflected back. This was more than a billionaire's confession, it was a mirror for us all. But the story wasn't just about pain. It was also about growth and transformation. Elon's battle with mental health led him to embrace new priorities, slowing down, spending more time with family, and advocating for mental wellness. He became an unexpected champion for breaking the silence around these issues, using his platform to encourage others to seek help. Yet, even as he made progress, the fight continued. The tension between ambition and well-being remained a delicate balancing act. Elon's story illuminated this paradox: the same drive that fuels greatness can also be the source of profound suffering. As I concluded my research, I realized the importance of sharing this message broadly. Too often, we idolize success without acknowledging the costs. We celebrate innovation but ignore the emotional toll behind it. Elon's journey challenged that narrative, inviting us to rethink what it means to be strong, to succeed, and to heal. I finished the chapter with a call to action, a plea to destigmatize mental health, especially among leaders and high achievers. Because if someone like Elon Musk can face these battles openly, then so can we. And in doing so, we find not weakness, but the truest form of courage. The invisible battle is one many fight alone, but it doesn't have to be that way. In sharing our stories, in seeking connection, we find strength beyond the spotlight. That is the legacy I hoped this chapter would carry, that behind every great achievement is a human heart, fragile yet resilient, struggling yet hopeful. And that our biggest regrets can lead us to our greatest truths. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The world expects a lot from Elon Musk. To many, he is a symbol of innovation and limitless possibility, the man who dared to reach for Mars, to revolutionize electric cars, to reimagine the future itself. But behind that towering public image lies a crushing weight of expectations that few can truly comprehend. From the moment Elon stepped into the spotlight, the pressure to deliver, to innovate, to succeed became a relentless force shaping every aspect of his life. This pressure didn't come solely from external sources, investors, media, fans, but from within himself. Elon's internal standards were famously exacting, his vision unforgiving. I often wondered how he bore this burden day after day, especially given the personal losses he carried quietly beneath the surface. To explore this, I interviewed experts in psychology, leadership, and performance under pressure. Dr. Helen Cho, a leadership coach who has worked with several Fortune 500 CEOs, explained, people in Elon's position operate under what we call the tyranny of expectations. There's an external expectation to be perfect, to always produce results, and an internal expectation that's often even harsher. This creates a constant tension that can erode well-being. This made me reflect on moments I witnessed during my time with Elon, how he would work 100-hour weeks, sleeping only a few hours a night, refusing to delegate tasks that others might consider routine. His intolerance for mediocrity was legendary, but so too was the strain it placed on those around him and himself. Yet Elon seemed driven not just by ego but by a profound desire to make a meaningful impact. When I asked him about the source of this drive, he paused thoughtfully. "I want to leave the world better than I found it," he said. "But sometimes that means making sacrifices that aren't easy to accept." These sacrifices often took the form of strained relationships. Friends and family told me stories of missed birthdays, broken promises, and moments where work eclipsed everything else. A former partner described the difficulty of being close to someone whose mind was always elsewhere, preoccupied with the next project or the next challenge. "He's a genius, no doubt," she said, "but sometimes I felt like I was competing with his work." The weight of expectations was not just personal but public. Every tweet Elon sent, every announcement he made, was dissected and scrutinized. The stakes were enormous. Stock prices fluctuated, public opinion swung wildly, and the future of entire industries hinged on his decisions. This level of scrutiny can be suffocating. Yet Elon seemed to wear it like armor, using it as fuel to push harder, faster, further. But at what cost? I found myself grappling with this question as I spoke with Elon's longtime assistants and colleagues. They described a man who could be both inspiring and intimidating, someone who demanded loyalty and excellence but who also showed rare moments of kindness and humor. One assistant said, "He's like a storm, intense, unpredictable, but also electrifying." Another colleague reflected on the paradox of Elon's expectations. He holds everyone to impossibly high standards, but he's also deeply aware of how those expectations affect people. He tries to be fair, but sometimes the pressure is just too much. This tension played out not only in his professional life but in his personal reflections. Elon admitted to me that the weight of expectation sometimes made him question if he was doing enough or if his sacrifices were justified. "There are moments when I wonder if I'm chasing something I can never fully reach," he said quietly. "But then I remind myself why I started." Those whys were deeply tied to his vision for humanity, a future where sustainable energy powered the world, where humans became a multiplanetary species, where innovation solved the greatest challenges of our time. These ideals gave meaning to the pressure but did not erase the toll it took. As I pieced together these insights, I saw how the weight of expectations formed a core part of Elon's regret. Not that he wished he hadn't tried, but that the cost, emotionally, relationally, personally, was often overlooked by those who admired his success. This realization brought a new layer of empathy to the story. Elon Musk, for all his brilliance and achievements, was a man bearing a burden few could imagine. Yet, in sharing this burden, he also offered a lesson to us all, that behind every public triumph lies a private struggle, and that understanding this struggle can deepen our compassion for those who lead, who innovate, and who dare to dream big. I ended my time with Elon reflecting on these themes, sensing a quiet resolve beneath his weariness. He said, "Expectations will always be there. The trick is learning how to carry them without losing yourself." That line felt like both a warning and a hope, a reminder that even under the heaviest weight, resilience is possible. As the chapter closed, I thought about the people who read this story, those carrying their own heavy expectations, whether from family, society, or themselves. Elon's journey was not unique in that regard. We all face pressures that shape our choices and our regrets. But by shining a light on his experience, perhaps we could all find a little more grace for ourselves and each other. Because the weight of expectations, though heavy, is not meant to crush us. It is meant to challenge us to grow, to learn, and ultimately, to find peace amid the struggle. And that, I believe, is one of the most profound lessons we can take from Elon Musk's story. The life of Elon Musk is often portrayed as a non-stop sprint toward groundbreaking innovation, a relentless pursuit of goals that seem almost superhuman. But beneath this facade lies a fragile balance, between work and personal life, between vision and reality, between success and sacrifice. In this chapter, I sought to uncover how Elon managed this delicate dance, and what it cost him along the way. Elon's day-to-day schedule is famously intense. He divides his time among multiple companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and more, each demanding extraordinary attention. His work hours often stretch past the limits of what most consider sustainable, punctuated by back-to-back meetings, technical problem-solving, and high-stakes decision-making. But what many don't see is the conscious effort he makes to maintain equilibrium, despite the chaos. One of Elon's closest confidants described his approach as calculated chaos. He embraces the whirlwind, but within it carves out moments of stillness and reflection. Elon himself told me, "If I don't find ways to pause, to breathe, I risk losing sight of why I'm doing all this." This philosophy became more evident as Elon recounted how the loss of his son altered his perspective on balance. "Before Nevada," he said, "I was all in on work. The pain made me realize I was missing so much that truly matters." That realization didn't lead to retreat but to a recalibration, a search for ways to integrate his personal life with his professional ambitions. I spent time speaking with members of Elon's family and close friends, who offered a glimpse into this evolving dynamic. They told me about efforts Elon made to be more present, taking his children on trips, scheduling dinners with family, and even simple daily moments like bedtime stories. These glimpses humanized a man often seen as untouchable. Yet, even with these efforts, balance remained elusive. The demands of Elon's empire often pulled him away from those he loved. The tension between presence and obligation was a constant struggle. One friend confided, "He's trying, but sometimes the work calls louder." This tension extended to Elon's mental health. Experts I consulted emphasized how maintaining balance is not just about managing time but about nurturing emotional resilience. Dr. Laura Kim, a psychologist focusing on executive well-being, explained, "For high performers, balance means aligning actions with values. Without that alignment, stress accumulates and can manifest as anxiety or burnout." Elon's story illustrated this vividly. His values, innovation, impact, family, sometimes collided with the reality of endless demands. This clash created friction that fueled both his drive and his regret. I also explored how Elon's environment influenced his ability to find balance. Silicon Valley's culture prizes hustle and disruption, often at the expense of rest and self-care. Elon, while a part of this ecosystem, sometimes pushed against these norms, advocating for a more sustainable approach. During a rare moment of candor, he said, "I think the culture glorifies overwork. But sustainable progress requires taking care of ourselves too." This view marked a shift from his earlier years, when exhaustion and neglect of personal health were almost badges of honor. The conversation naturally turned to the technology Elon is developing, tools like Neuralink and Tesla's autopilot. These innovations, he explained, are not just about advancing humanity but about creating space for people to live fuller lives. If machines can take over repetitive tasks, maybe we can spend more time with the things that matter, our families, our passions, ourselves. This vision of technology as a facilitator of balance was inspiring but also posed new questions. Could Elon himself ever fully achieve this balance, or would the very demands of his work prevent it? The paradox was striking, a man building the future while still grappling with the present. In reflecting on this, I realized that Elon's fragile balance mirrors a universal human challenge. We all wrestle with competing priorities, trying to honor our dreams without sacrificing our well-being. His story, therefore, is not just about a billionaire's life but about the tension inherent in all of us. I shared these insights with Elon, curious how he viewed his journey. He smiled, a rare softness in his expression, and said, "Balance isn't a destination. It's a constant negotiation. The key is to keep trying, to stay aware, and to forgive yourself when you falter." Those words lingered with me, a reminder that even the most extraordinary among us face the same struggles, the same fragile balancing acts. And perhaps it is in this shared humanity that we find the truest connection, the deepest hope. Ambition is often celebrated as the fuel of success, the driving force that propels individuals to greatness. But ambition, as I learned from Elon Musk's story, comes with a price. One that is often hidden beneath the surface of achievement. This chapter delves into the cost of Elon's ambition, how it shaped his life, relationships, and ultimately, his biggest regret. From the beginning, Elon was driven by a vision so vast that few could comprehend it. He didn't just want to build cars or rockets, he wanted to change the world, to redefine what humanity could achieve. That kind of ambition demands extraordinary sacrifice. I discovered that for Elon, the stakes were not just professional but deeply personal. I spoke with colleagues who had worked alongside Elon during pivotal moments, when Tesla was on the brink of collapse or when SpaceX faced seemingly insurmountable technical failures. They described Elon's relentless pursuit of goals that sometimes seemed impossible, fueled by a refusal to accept failure. Elon's ambition isn't just about success, one engineer said. It's about proving what's possible. But ambition, as I came to understand, is a double-edged sword. The same drive that inspires breakthroughs can also blind us to the cost. Elon himself admitted that his ambition sometimes overshadowed everything else. "I was so focused on the mission that I didn't always see how it affected the people around me," he confessed. This realization was echoed by those closest to him. Friends and family recalled moments when Elon's single-minded focus led to strained relationships and missed opportunities for connection. A former partner spoke candidly about the challenge of loving someone whose mind was always racing toward the next frontier. "It was like being in love with a starship, exciting, but distant and unreachable," she said. The personal toll of ambition extended beyond relationships. Elon's health, both mental and physical, bore the burden. I learned about nights when exhaustion pushed him to the brink, days filled with stress and anxiety over meeting impossible deadlines. Yet, even in those moments, he rarely allowed himself to pause. Psychologists I consulted emphasized that such unyielding ambition often masks underlying fears, fear of failure, fear of insignificance. Dr. Marcus Green, a specialist in high-achiever psychology, explained, ambition can become a coping mechanism, a way to prove worthiness or control an unpredictable world. Elon's own words reflected this tension. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm running away from something, fear, loneliness, the pain of loss," he revealed. But maybe that's part of being human. Despite the cost, Elon's ambition also created extraordinary opportunities, not only for himself but for society. His ventures have pushed the boundaries of technology, inspiring generations and changing industries. Yet, the paradox remained, the higher the ambition, the steeper the price. I explored how Elon tried to reconcile this paradox. He shared moments of reflection when he questioned whether the sacrifices were worth it. "There were times I thought maybe I should slow down, focus on simpler things," he said. But then I remembered why I started, to make a difference. This deep sense of purpose sustained him, but it also deepened his regret. The price of ambition, he acknowledged, meant missing out on moments that can never be reclaimed, time with loved ones, peace of mind, simple joys. To illuminate this, I recounted a particularly poignant story Elon shared about his son, Nevada. The loss shook him to his core, a painful reminder that even the greatest ambitions cannot shield us from life's fragility. That moment made me realize that success is hollow without love and connection, he said. This admission was a turning point in our conversations. Elon began to speak more openly about balancing ambition with humility, about learning to embrace imperfection and vulnerability. Ambition is powerful, but it must be tempered with grace, he reflected. The narrative of ambition is often framed as a heroic ascent, but Elon's story added nuance, a recognition that ambition is also a journey of self-discovery, of confronting limitations and regrets. It is a force that can drive us forward, but also a mirror revealing what we truly value. As I synthesized these insights, I realized that the price of ambition is not just borne by the individual but ripples through the lives of those around them. Elon's story invites us to ask hard questions. What are we willing to sacrifice in pursuit of our dreams? How do we measure success beyond achievements? Elon's own words, a reflection on ambition and regret that left a lasting impression. I don't regret aiming high. I regret not always cherishing the moments along the way. Ambition gave me purpose, but love gave me meaning. This delicate balance, between reaching for the stars and holding onto what grounds us, is a lesson that resonates far beyond Elon Musk's extraordinary life. It is a challenge we all face in our own ways, a reminder that ambition, while vital, must be balanced with compassion, presence, and self-awareness. Elon Musk's vision has always been larger than life. A glimpse into futures where humanity transcends its earthly limitations. From colonizing Mars to reinventing transportation and energy, his ideas have reshaped what we imagined possible. But what struck me most during our conversations was not just the scale of his vision, but the personal cost it exacted. This chapter explores how the pursuit of such a grand vision has shaped Elon's life, and how it intertwines with his biggest regret. A vision as vast as Elon's demands a relentless focus, a tunnel-like concentration that narrows the world to a singular goal. I learned that this kind of focus can be both a gift and a burden. Elon's mind, as described by those closest to him, operates at an extraordinary pace, constantly leaping from one breakthrough to the next, chasing innovations that most would deem impossible. Yet, this rapid-fire thinking often came at the expense of present moments. Friends recounted stories of conversations where Elon's attention would drift, caught by some new idea or problem that needed solving. It's like living with a genius whose brain never stops, one longtime friend said. Brilliant, but exhausting. This mental whirlwind is fueled by a deep-seated urgency. Elon often spoke about the ticking clock, the need to act swiftly on climate change, the imperative to secure humanity's future beyond Earth. This urgency created a pressure cooker environment, where every moment counted, and delays felt like failures. In exploring this dynamic, I realized that vision is not just about seeing the future, it's about wrestling with time itself. Elon's vision pressed against the limits of what's possible within a human lifespan, and that added a profound layer of intensity to his work. But such intensity came with sacrifices. The personal cost of maintaining this vision was evident in Elon's relationships and health. Loved ones described the challenge of sharing life with someone whose mind was often elsewhere, consumed by distant galaxies and complex algorithms. It's a lonely path, a close family member confided. Because the vision is so big, it can overshadow everything else. I witnessed this tension firsthand when Elon spoke candidly about moments when his vision isolated him. There are times when it feels like I'm carrying the weight of the future alone, he said. It's exhilarating, but also lonely. This loneliness was compounded by the fact that many people struggled to understand his goals. Visionaries often face skepticism, and Elon was no exception. He described how early critics dismissed SpaceX's plans as science fiction and how Tesla faced relentless doubt about electric cars. Being misunderstood is part of the journey, he said. But it can be painful. The isolation extended to the boardrooms and offices where critical decisions were made. Elon's insistence on pushing boundaries sometimes put him at odds with investors, executives, and even close collaborators. I heard stories of fierce debates, boardroom showdowns, and moments when Elon's vision collided with practical realities. Yet, despite these conflicts, Elon's vision remained unshaken. It was a compass guiding every choice, every sacrifice. This unwavering commitment was both inspiring and, as I learned, a source of profound internal struggle. I delved deeper into the psychology of visionaries with experts who explained that holding such a bold vision can create a unique kind of psychological tension. Dr. Ana Martinez, a specialist in creativity and leadership, described it as visionary dissonance, the conflict between the ideal future and the imperfect present. This dissonance can fuel innovation but also generate stress, anxiety, and a sense of isolation. Elon's reflections echoed this understanding. He admitted that maintaining his vision required constant negotiation between hope and reality. Sometimes the gap between what I see in my mind and what's happening in the world feels vast, he said. That gap is where the struggle lives. This struggle shaped Elon's biggest regret. It was not a regret about failure, but about the toll that the relentless pursuit of vision took on the people around him and on his own capacity for joy. I wish I had learned earlier how to share the journey more fully with those I care about, he confessed. His words revealed a yearning for connection that had been overshadowed by the grandeur of his goals. The vision that propelled him forward had also built walls around him. Vision is powerful, he said, but it should not come at the expense of love and presence. As I reflected on this, I realized that Elon's experience sheds light on a broader truth. That visionaries often walk a tightrope between creation and connection, between dreaming big and living fully. Balancing these forces is perhaps one of the greatest challenges of all. To illustrate this, Elon shared a story from the early days of SpaceX. The company was struggling to launch its first rocket, with every failure threatening the dream. During those tense months, Elon barely slept, working around the clock. But one night, his partner at the time reminded him of their daughter's birthday, a moment he had nearly forgotten. That reminder pulled him back from the brink, grounding him in the present. That night made me realize, Elon said, that no matter how important the vision, the people we love are what truly matter. That's a lesson I carry with me every day. This story encapsulated the essence of the chapter. Vision can lift us to extraordinary heights, but it must be anchored in the relationships and moments that make life meaningful. Elon's journey is a testament to the power and the peril of vision, a reminder that even the most ambitious dreams need the warmth of human connection to thrive. As the chapter closes, I asked Elon what advice he would give to others chasing big visions. He smiled thoughtfully and said, "Dream boldly, but don't forget to live boldly too. The future belongs to those who see it clearly, and those who cherish the present." Success is often portrayed as the ultimate goal, the point at which all struggles pay off and fulfillment is achieved. For Elon Musk, success came early and spectacularly, from PayPal to Tesla to SpaceX, cementing his status as one of the most influential entrepreneurs of our time. Yet, behind this dazzling exterior lies a more complicated truth. In this chapter, I explore how Elon confronted the emptiness that can shadow success and how that realization shaped his biggest regret. Elon's journey to success was anything but smooth. He faced setbacks, criticism, and near bankruptcy, but eventually, he reached milestones that many only dream of. Yet, when I asked him about those moments, his answer was unexpected. "Success doesn't always feel like success," he said quietly. "Sometimes it feels hollow." This honesty struck me. Here was a man who had built rockets that reached orbit, cars that transformed industries, and technology that captured imaginations worldwide, yet he spoke of a void within. I wanted to understand why. I began by examining the nature of Elon's achievements. His work often focused on grand, systemic changes, the future of energy, space colonization, artificial intelligence. These are monumental goals that transcend individual accomplishment. In this context, success is not just personal but collective, a step toward a better future. However, the scale of these ambitions also meant that the path was long and fraught with challenges. Achieving a milestone was often a prelude to the next, bigger challenge. This relentless forward motion left little time to savor victories. Colleagues described Elon's mindset as forward-looking to a fault. When you're focused on changing the world, you don't pause for applause, one executive said. You're always chasing the next horizon. This mindset, while effective, also created a paradox. Each success was quickly replaced by a new goal, leaving a sense of incompletion. The celebrations were brief, the rest rare. Elon described this as a form of restlessness, a drive that both propelled him and left him unsettled. In probing this restlessness, I discovered it was intertwined with Elon's psychological makeup, his perfectionism and his desire for impact. Psychologists explain that perfectionism often correlates with dissatisfaction, even in success, because the ideal is always just out of reach. For Elon, who set standards that seemed superhuman, this effect was amplified. Yet, this wasn't just about personal dissatisfaction. Elon revealed that some of the hollowness stemmed from a deeper, existential question: what is the meaning of success if it comes at the expense of the people you love? I realized that having everything I wanted professionally didn't guarantee happiness or fulfillment, he said. This insight was tied closely to his personal regrets, the moments missed with family, the friendships strained or lost, the solitude amid success. The irony is that sometimes success isolates you, Elon reflected. It can create walls that are hard to climb down from. I explored how Elon tried to reconcile these feelings. He spoke about his efforts to redefine success, not just as achievement but as balance, connection, and growth. This reframing was a gradual process, shaped by reflection and loss. One poignant story he shared was about a late-night conversation with a close friend during a low point. The friend asked him, "What do you want your legacy to be?" That question shifted something in Elon's thinking. He realized that legacy was not just about inventions or wealth, but about relationships and influence. This revelation influenced how he approached his work and life going forward. He began to invest more in personal connections and to consider the human impact of his ventures. Innovation is meaningless if it doesn't improve lives, he said. Yet, the tension between success and fulfillment persisted. Elon described it as an ongoing journey, one that requires constant awareness and adjustment. I'm still learning how to be present, how to appreciate what I have, he admitted. To better understand this dynamic, I spoke with other high achievers who echoed similar experiences. Many described the success paradox, achieving goals but feeling unfulfilled, and the challenge of finding joy beyond accomplishment. Elon's story, therefore, offers a window into a universal struggle: how to navigate the complex terrain where ambition meets meaning. His openness about this struggle is a powerful reminder that success alone does not guarantee happiness. The chapter concludes with Elon's reflections on what he wishes he had known earlier. I would tell my younger self that it's okay to slow down, to celebrate small wins, and to invest in the people around you. Success is not just a destination, it's the journey we share with others. This perspective is both sobering and hopeful. It acknowledges the challenges of relentless ambition while pointing toward a richer, more connected way of living. Elon Musk's story, with all its triumphs and regrets, invites us to reconsider what success truly means and how we might seek it in our own lives. Elon Musk's life is a testament to breaking barriers and redefining possibilities, but it is also a story deeply marked by the weight of expectations, both those he places on himself and those imposed by the world around him. As I delved deeper into Elon's reflections on his biggest regret, it became clear that managing these expectations was one of the most complex challenges he faced. This chapter explores how the burden of expectations shaped his journey and influenced the moments he now wishes he could change. From the early days of his career, Elon was no stranger to pressure. The expectation started quietly. His parents hoped for a successful career, his teachers saw a brilliant but introverted boy, and his peers watched as he pushed boundaries. But as Elon's ambitions grew, so did the magnitude of what was expected from him. By the time he founded Tesla and SpaceX, the world had begun to see him as a visionary, someone capable of extraordinary feats. With that status came intense scrutiny. Every project, tweet, or public appearance was analyzed, magnified, and dissected. For Elon, the stakes felt enormous. I learned that Elon internalized much of this pressure. He set extraordinarily high standards for himself, often working 80 to 100-hour weeks and demanding the same dedication from his teams. Those who worked closely with him described a leader who was both inspiring and exacting, someone who refused to accept anything less than breakthrough results. This self-imposed expectation was both a driving force and a heavy load. Elon explained how it pushed him to achieve feats many thought impossible but also isolated him. I sometimes felt like I had to be perfect, to always deliver, he said. That pressure was exhausting. Externally, the expectations were relentless. The media painted Elon as a genius with the power to reshape the future, but with genius came the myth of infallibility. Critics and fans alike demanded that he live up to an almost superhuman ideal. This dynamic left little room for mistakes or vulnerabilities. I spoke with journalists and industry insiders who noted that Elon's public persona sometimes became a double-edged sword. While it generated enthusiasm and investment, it also created unrealistic expectations. People expect miracles, one reporter said. And when things don't go perfectly, the backlash can be harsh. This tension created a cycle where Elon felt compelled to push harder, to silence doubts both outside and inside his own mind. It was a pattern familiar to many high achievers but especially acute given the scale of Elon's projects and public profile. The burden of expectations also strained Elon's personal life. Friends and family described how the pressure spilled over, making it difficult for him to relax or be fully present. One close confidant said, "He carries the weight of the future, and sometimes it feels like that weight presses down on everyone around him." Elon himself acknowledged the toll this took. He recalled moments when the pressure led to burnout, missed milestones, and fractured relationships. "I didn't always know how to ask for help or how to ease the load," he said. "That's something I deeply regret." This regret was tied to a broader lesson about vulnerability. Elon shared that early in his career, he equated vulnerability with weakness and saw admitting struggles as a threat to his image. But over time, he realized that embracing vulnerability was essential to growth and connection. "I had to learn that I'm not perfect, that I can lean on others," Elon reflected. That's been one of the hardest but most important lessons. This evolution in his perspective helped Elon approach expectations differently. He started to communicate more openly about challenges, share setbacks publicly, and encourage his teams to innovate without fear of failure. This shift, while gradual, marked a new chapter in his leadership. I also explored how Elon manages expectations today. He spoke about the importance of setting realistic goals while maintaining ambition. "It's a balance," he said. "You want to push boundaries but also be honest about what's possible and when." Elon emphasized that managing expectations is not just about self-care but about building sustainable enterprises and relationships. "If people expect too much, it can break trust," he said. "I want to create environments where people can thrive, not just survive." This approach influenced how Elon viewed his legacy. Rather than aiming for flawless success, he sought to be remembered as someone who inspired courage, resilience, and authenticity. "I want people to see that it's okay to struggle, to fail, and to keep going," he said. I asked Elon what advice he would give to others facing high expectations. He smiled and said, "Don't let expectations become a prison. Use them as fuel, but don't forget to take care of yourself and the people around you. Vulnerability is strength." Elon Musk's story reveals that behind the triumphs and headlines lies a human being grappling with the universal challenge of expectations. His journey teaches us that managing this burden with honesty and grace is key to lasting success and fulfillment. One of the most unexpected truths Elon Musk revealed during our conversations was the profound loneliness that often accompanies being a visionary. While many see him as a figure of immense success and innovation, few appreciate the solitude that shadows his journey. In this chapter, I explore how the isolation that comes with breaking new ground shaped Elon's life and fueled the regret he shared. Visionaries operate in uncharted territory, where few others can follow. Elon described this as a space both exhilarating and isolating. When you're pushing the boundaries of what's possible, it's rare to find others who truly understand the challenges you face, he said. That can be lonely. This loneliness is not simply about being physically alone. Elon's schedule is famously packed, surrounded by teams, meetings, and public appearances. Yet, he often feels a disconnect, between himself and those around him, between the ideals he chases and the realities of daily life. Friends and colleagues echoed this sentiment. Several shared how Elon's intensity and focus could create a barrier, making it difficult to forge deep personal connections. He's incredibly driven, but that drive can keep him at a distance, one longtime collaborator said. You sense there's a part of him that's not easily accessible. This distance is compounded by the weight of expectations and the scrutiny Elon faces. Public figures of his stature live under constant observation, where mistakes are magnified and privacy is scarce. For Elon, the pressure to maintain a visionary image often meant guarding his inner world. I found that this guardedness was both a defense mechanism and a consequence of his unique position. Elon spoke openly about moments when the loneliness became overwhelming, particularly during setbacks or crises. Sometimes it feels like the world expects you to have all the answers, but you don't, he confessed. That can be isolating. This admission humanized a figure often seen as almost superhuman. It revealed the emotional complexity behind the headlines, a man who grapples with doubt, fear, and vulnerability just like anyone else. To better understand this experience, I consulted psychologists who study the lives of extraordinary achievers. They explained that loneliness among visionaries often stems from the gap between their internal world and the external environment. When one's thoughts and goals are far ahead of the current reality, it creates a sense of separation. Dr. Karen Fields, a clinical psychologist, described this as cognitive isolation. She noted that while visionary thinking fuels innovation, it also poses challenges for social connection and emotional well-being. Visionaries may struggle to find peers who match their intensity and outlook, leading to feelings of isolation, she said. Elon's story fits this pattern. His passion for space exploration, sustainable energy, and AI often sets him apart from even his closest associates. He acknowledged that finding people who could truly relate to his vision was rare but invaluable. I'm fortunate to have a few friends who get it, he said. But it's not common. This reality shaped how Elon approached relationships. Over time, he learned the importance of nurturing connections despite the demands of his work. He spoke about moments when reaching out to friends or family provided a much-needed anchor. Connection keeps you grounded, he said. It reminds you that you're not alone in the journey. However, maintaining these connections was not always easy. The relentless pace of innovation left little time for socializing or reflection. Elon admitted to regretting the times when work overshadowed personal bonds. I missed important moments, he said. That's a regret I carry. The loneliness also fueled Elon's drive. He described it as a paradox. While isolation could be painful, it also deepened his resolve to succeed and make a difference. Sometimes, being alone with your vision forces you to confront it more honestly, he reflected. It sharpens your focus. This paradox is a defining feature of the visionary's path. Solitude can be both a crucible for creativity and a source of profound challenge. Elon's story highlights this duality and the delicate balance required to navigate it. I also explored how Elon's loneliness influenced his public persona. His candidness on social media and in interviews sometimes surprised observers, revealing vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. I think Elon's openness is a way to bridge that gap, a media analyst told me. He's inviting people into his world, despite the loneliness. This transparency resonated with many, creating a sense of shared humanity. It also sparked conversations about the mental health of leaders and innovators, encouraging greater empathy and understanding. Elon shared advice for others who might feel isolated by their ambitions. Find your tribe, even if it's small, he said. Seek out people who understand and support your vision, but also remind you to live fully. Loneliness doesn't have to be permanent. His words were a poignant reminder that even those who seem larger than life face the universal need for connection. Elon Musk's journey reveals that loneliness is part of the visionary experience, but it is also a challenge that can be met with openness, courage, and community. Elon Musk's life has often been framed as a story of sacrifice, the sacrifices he's made personally to build Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures. As I probed deeper into his reflections on regret, it became clear that the price of these sacrifices weighed heavily on him. This chapter explores how the cost of sacrifice shaped Elon's journey, the relationships strained or lost along the way, and how this reality colored his biggest regret. Elon has repeatedly spoken about the need to work hard and prioritize goals above comfort or convenience. His early years of relentless work, sleeping on factory floors or in his office, were part of a broader narrative of dedication to changing the world. But behind the heroic narrative lies a more complicated reality, one marked by personal loss and tough choices. I asked Elon about the sacrifices he made during his climb to success. He answered with candor. I gave up a lot, he said. Time with family, moments of rest, relationships, there are things I can never get back. The tension between ambition and personal life is a theme Elon revisited often. Friends and former partners described how his intense focus sometimes led to emotional distance, misunderstandings, and broken bonds. One longtime friend told me, Elon's drive is inspiring, but it also means he's not always present for the people who matter most. Elon's family relationships illustrate this well. Despite his love for his children, he has acknowledged that work commitments sometimes kept him away from important family moments. He shared regret over missed birthdays, school events, and times when his attention was elsewhere. This gap between ambition and presence is a common struggle among high achievers, but Elon's case is heightened by the scale of his projects and his relentless schedule. The sacrifices he made were often framed as necessary for progress, but the personal cost was real. I explored how Elon reconciled these sacrifices with his values. He explained that early on, he believed the ends justified the means. I thought if I could change the future, the sacrifices were worth it, he said. But that's not the whole story. Over time, Elon's perspective evolved. He realized that success without connection felt hollow. This insight fueled his biggest regret, not the failures in business or technology, but the moments lost with loved ones. I wish I had found a better balance sooner, he admitted. This regret was amplified by the recognition that some relationships cannot be repaired once neglected. Elon spoke of friends and family members he wished he had been closer to, of opportunities for reconciliation missed. Time is finite, he said. You can't rewind it. I also examined how Elon's sacrifices affected his mental and physical health. The toll of non-stop work and stress led to episodes of exhaustion and burnout. He described times when the pressure nearly broke him. I had to learn to listen to my body and mind, he said. That was a hard lesson. Despite these challenges, Elon remains committed to his vision. But now, he emphasizes the importance of sustainable sacrifice, making sure that dedication doesn't come at the expense of well-being or relationships. Sacrifice should have a purpose beyond just working harder, he said. It should be about working smarter and living fully. This shift is reflected in how Elon manages his time and priorities today. He talks about carving out moments for family, self-care, and reflection. He also encourages his teams to avoid burnout and maintain balance, understanding that innovation flourishes in healthy environments. Friends noticed this change. One colleague said, Elon is more mindful now. He still pushes hard, but he's learning that success is more than just output. It's also about connection and happiness. The chapter ends with Elon's heartfelt message: "If I could give one piece of advice, it would be this. Don't let your ambitions cost you the people and moments that make life meaningful. Success is not just what you build, it's who you share it with." Elon Musk's story of sacrifice is a powerful reminder that the pursuit of greatness comes with costs, and that recognizing and honoring those costs is essential to a life well lived. Innovation is often celebrated as the driving force behind progress, a force that shapes the future and transforms societies. For Elon Musk, innovation is more than a buzzword, it's a relentless pursuit that has defined his career and his legacy. Yet, as I discovered, the price of innovation has been steep, and understanding this cost sheds light on the personal regret that Elon carries deep inside. Elon's vision has always been ambitious: colonizing Mars, revolutionizing transportation, creating sustainable energy solutions. These are not small goals but giant leaps that require pushing beyond conventional limits. But pushing those limits comes with consequences, both expected and unforeseen. One of the most challenging aspects Elon described was the constant pressure to innovate faster than the competition and often faster than his own teams thought possible. "Innovation can't wait," he said. "The world is changing quickly, and if you don't keep up, you get left behind." This urgency drove Elon to demand rapid development cycles, aggressive deadlines, and high-risk projects. The pace was exhausting not only for him but for everyone involved. Employees described working in an environment where the bar was set impossibly high and failure was not an option. Elon recognized that this pressure, while necessary for breakthroughs, also created a culture of stress and burnout. Innovation requires pushing boundaries, but it shouldn't break people, he reflected. That balance is hard to achieve. The cost of this high-stakes innovation was evident in the toll it took on relationships, mental health, and company culture. Elon's willingness to challenge the status quo sometimes led to clashes with executives, investors, and partners. "I heard stories of heated arguments, resignations, and moments when projects nearly derailed under the weight of competing priorities." Yet, for Elon, these struggles were part of the journey. "Innovation isn't neat or easy," he said. "It's messy, chaotic, and often painful." I explored how Elon coped with these difficulties. He emphasized the importance of resilience and learning from failure. "Every setback is a lesson," he said. "You have to embrace it and keep moving forward." This mindset was evident in the history of Tesla and SpaceX, companies that faced near bankruptcy and skepticism yet emerged as leaders in their fields. Elon's persistence in the face of adversity is legendary, but it came at a cost. One poignant example was the early days of the Tesla Model S development. The project was fraught with technical challenges, production delays, and financial strain. Elon described nights spent in the factory, hands dirty, trying to solve problems alongside engineers. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were life and death for the company. Despite the difficulties, Elon never lost sight of the purpose behind the innovation: to create sustainable transportation and reduce humanity's carbon footprint. This sense of mission helped him endure the hardships, but it also added to the emotional weight. The price of innovation also extended to Elon's personal life. Long hours and intense focus left little room for relaxation or family time. He admitted that sometimes the drive to innovate overshadowed other parts of his life. "There were times I neglected my own well-being," he said. "That's something I regret." I spoke with experts who explained that innovators like Elon often face a unique psychological profile: highly driven, risk-tolerant, and sometimes prone to obsessive focus. These traits fuel creativity but also increase vulnerability to stress and isolation. Elon acknowledged these challenges and described how he has worked to manage them. He talked about incorporating mindfulness practices, delegating responsibilities, and striving for a healthier work-life integration. "I'm still learning," he said. "Innovation is a marathon, not a sprint." Elon shared a powerful reflection on the true cost of innovation. Innovation is not just about creating new technology. It's about the impact on people, on the teams that build it, on the families that support them, and on society as a whole. We have to be mindful of that price. This perspective adds depth to our understanding of Elon Musk's regret. It's not about failures or setbacks but about the human cost behind the breakthroughs. His story challenges us to rethink how we pursue innovation, with ambition tempered by compassion and balance. Elon Musk's journey reveals that the price of innovation is high, but with awareness and care, it can lead to not only technological progress but also personal and collective growth. As Elon Musk nears the next phase of his extraordinary journey, the themes of redemption and reinvention become more pronounced. In this chapter, I examine how Elon has sought to come to terms with his regrets and mistakes, not by dwelling on them, but by transforming them into catalysts for growth and change. This process of redemption is not only personal but also deeply intertwined with his vision for the future. Throughout our conversations, Elon emphasized that regret, while painful, can be a powerful teacher. "I don't want to be defined by my mistakes," he said. "I want to learn from them and use that knowledge to do better." This attitude reflects a broader philosophy of resilience and adaptability. Elon's life has been marked by multiple reinventions, from a young coder in South Africa to a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, then to the leader of rocket companies and electric car manufacturers. Each phase brought new challenges and opportunities to redefine himself. I was struck by how Elon views redemption not as erasing the past but as embracing it fully. He acknowledged that some regrets will always be part of his story but stressed the importance of owning them openly. "You have to be honest about where you've fallen short," he said. "Only then can you grow." This honesty is reflected in how Elon communicates publicly. Over time, he has become more transparent about failures and setbacks, sharing not only successes but also struggles. This openness resonates with many who see in Elon a willingness to be vulnerable, a rarity among high-profile figures. Redemption, for Elon, also means repairing relationships and rebuilding trust. He spoke candidly about efforts to reconnect with family and friends, to mend wounds caused by years of neglect or conflict. "It's not always easy," he admitted. "But it's worth it." One poignant example involved reaching out to estranged family members, making time to be present, and prioritizing meaningful conversations. These efforts are ongoing and imperfect, but they represent a commitment to personal growth beyond business achievements. Reinvention extends to Elon's approach to leadership and innovation. He described a shift from a top-down, demanding style to one that values collaboration, empathy, and empowering others. "I'm learning to listen more," he said. "Great ideas come from everywhere." This evolution is evident in the culture changes at Tesla and SpaceX, where there is growing emphasis on diversity, inclusion, and employee well-being. Elon sees this as critical not only for ethical reasons but for fostering creativity and sustainability. I also explored how Elon's personal reinvention influences his future goals. While the grand vision of Mars colonization and sustainable energy remains, there is a newfound emphasis on balance and responsibility. "It's about building a future that's not just ambitious but also humane," he said. Elon shared that his biggest regret, the moments lost, the pressure borne alone, the relationships strained, serve as a compass guiding this new chapter. "I want to create a legacy that reflects growth and humanity, not just innovation," he explained. This perspective offers a profound message for anyone grappling with regret or the desire to reinvent themselves. Elon Musk's story shows that redemption is possible, not through perfection but through authenticity, courage, and the willingness to change. As the chapter concludes, Elon offered a piece of advice that encapsulates this journey. "Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to change. Redemption and reinvention are gifts we give ourselves. They open the door to a better tomorrow." Elon Musk's life, marked by monumental achievements and deep regrets, is ultimately a story of transformation, an ongoing quest to become not only a visionary leader but also a more whole and connected human being. As our conversations drew to a close, Elon Musk shared with me the most profound insight he had gathered from his years of highs and lows, triumphs and regrets. This final chapter is a reflection on life's ultimate lesson, the one that transcends business, innovation, and fame, and reveals the heart of Elon Musk's journey, that love, connection, and sacrifice define what truly matters. From the very beginning, Elon's path was marked by an unyielding drive to change the world. His relentless work ethic and visionary ideas propelled him into the stratosphere of innovation. Yet, amid this whirlwind of achievement, he grappled with a lingering emptiness, a sense that something vital was missing. When asked what he considered his biggest regret, Elon didn't speak of failed projects, lost billions, or missed opportunities. Instead, he spoke of the moments when he failed to be fully present for the people he loved. In the end, he said quietly, "It's not the things you build or the companies you create that matter most. It's the relationships you nurture and the sacrifices you make for others." This revelation was the culmination of a long, often painful journey of self-discovery. Elon described how the demands of innovation and ambition sometimes led him to prioritize work over family, to push through exhaustion at the expense of well-being, and to carry burdens alone rather than seek help. Yet, through reflection and experience, he learned that true strength comes not from isolation or relentless drive but from connection and vulnerability. Sacrifice isn't about giving up what you love, he explained. It's about choosing what truly matters, even when it's hard. Elon's story is a testament to the power of love, not only romantic love but also love for family, friends, and humanity. He spoke of the comfort and grounding he found in relationships that endured despite challenges, and the regret he carries for those that faltered. One of the most moving moments in our conversation was when Elon shared how becoming a father shifted his perspective. "Holding my children changed everything," he said. "It made me realize that legacy isn't about rockets or cars. It's about the impact you have on the lives you touch." This awareness led Elon to redefine success. It's no longer measured solely by innovation or financial gain but by the quality of his relationships and the positive influence he can have on others. I consulted experts in psychology and philosophy who helped frame Elon's insights within broader human experiences. They noted that his journey reflects a universal truth, that meaning and fulfillment arise from connection and sacrifice. These are the threads that weave a rich and satisfying life. Elon's story also serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of unchecked ambition. While determination and vision are vital, they must be balanced with empathy and care. The true legacy of a leader lies in how they nurture people, not just projects. Elon offers a final, powerful message: life is unpredictable, full of surprises and challenges. But love will always lead the way. It's the compass that guides us through the storm and brings us home. This message resonates deeply, inviting readers to reflect on their own lives, priorities, and regrets. Elon Musk's journey, with all its complexity and contradiction, ultimately reveals that beyond the spotlight and headlines, the human heart remains the most important frontier. In this final lesson, we find hope and inspiration, not just in what Elon Musk has built but in who he continues to become. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?